If I wanted class, I would have gotten the Bronte sisters.
Right.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.
All right, everybody.
Woo!
Welcome to One Fucking Hour. I am Evan Husney, joined, of course, by my two dudes here. We got to my left, we got Tom Fitzgerald. Tom, sup?
Hey, just another day in paradise, right?
That's right. And to my right, the first person to my right, who's usually here except when he's not in Ireland, we got Mr. Marcus Herring. Marcus, what's going on?
What's up? Just happy to be here, as always.
Good to have you.
This is not court ordered, right? For you?
I'm just lucky
Okay, is that
to be
what you're
here.
saying?
Yeah.
Right,
I'm just lucky to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, right. House arrest, Marcus.
Nice.
All right, and today we have a very special guest with us all the way to the right. We got an old friend of all of ours here, a former colleague to me, actually. We have Mr. Lars Nilsson of the a film programmer from the Austin Film Society. Lars, what's going on, man? Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I don't know why I'm here, but I appreciate you having me on the show. You guys are doing an amazing job. The chemistry is perfect, and then I'm just going to fuck everything up.
No.
It's going to be a disaster. We're going to do like 3 hours retakes. No, it's great to have you. You're on like the top of our list, basically, for guests. We were just like, and then we got to get Lars at some point. You know, so I'm glad that it finally is happening with this film.
True. We were pointing out last week
great to have
that we all know you from like different decades and different places, and
Yeah,
we're
it's
all
funny.
converging right here.
It's funny.
Yeah, we should sort of cover that. I mean, you know, Lars and I used to work together at the Alamo Draft House in one of those decades.
I met you from Birdemic. Like, I think that was the first time we met, right?
Yeah, I think that's
you and James. You were kind of James's. Well, you know, you're James's assistant. Let's face it. You know,
handler.
Yeah, handler on Birdemic, and I think that was the first time I met you. And then you kind of came into our world and became part of the sort of Draft House world back in the day.
Actually, Lars, I was actually James Wynn's Peter Falk. Actually, is more what I was.
Right.
Oh,
which we'll get into. But and then
now
Tom.
this is going to be an interesting podcast. Actually, I have the same story. Birdemic screened at the theater that I was a programmer at. And you were there, and I was in the projection booth, and then I look over and I'm like, who's this fucking guy in the projection booth? And he has like, I'm kidding, but just like, because you were doing something with like your brother or something, and I had no idea who you were.
We had
right.
robotic birds time to deploy from the ceiling of your theater.
And I was like, it's all good. Let's get down. Tim and Eric introduced the film. We had like this thing where it's like $1 million, and everybody. I was supposed to hit strobe lights and stuff, and so there was all this, you know, chicanery and stagecraft, and I was just like, oh, this guy's great, because we were sort of projection booth buddies for that time, and I was like, this guy's cool.
But enough about me. How do you know Lars? But how do you know Lars, not me?
You know, just more of that, the theater that should not be named. No, I'm kidding. No, but like, you know, I was a head programmer at Cinefamily in Los Angeles, and then there was just this synergy that just kept growing between the whole Austin scene, and I don't know. You're going to meet.
I can tell you, I have a very direct memory about how our first discussion on the phone. When you were working at that cinema that cannot be named, the person who cannot be named had asked me to come by and maybe do a series. And then he was like, but first I wanted to kind of put you on the phone with Tom to kind of talk with Tom about some of the movies that you might choose, you know. And you got on and you kind of grilled me a little bit, I gotta say, like, because you were kind of like, we don't want you know, I want to be sure we don't have this kind of afros and shotguns type.
Oh yeah, that's me.
Movie,
I'm sorry.
You know, and then I was like, one thing I was thinking about was sometimes Aunt Martha does dreadful things, and you were like, yeah, well, you know, even that is a little bit kind of a cliched kind of grindhouse kind of thing.
I did. I love that movie.
No, you were really sticking it to me. Like it was like you were like
Lars,
father of the bride, kind of in a way, you know.
I was
Lars,
very
can you be on every week?
Yeah, this is set in stone. I was just protective of the quote unquote brand because no one else was. And so when there's strangers, you know, I'm like some kind of viral, thing where it gets in your body where there's a virus that's threatening, and like red blood cells, white blood cells or something. White blood cells. I was the cop, white blood cells of Cinefamily. And so I was just like, who's this fucking guy? And I was like, no, maybe, sure. But then it was great because you picked the Wild Man Steve movie, and I was like, all good. So I remember that. Not that call, but yeah. So
yeah, no, I mean, and at it really was like, who is this fucking guy? And that's totally fine. I mean, I get it,
I just didn't know you. Yeah. But
this guy's out of Texas.
I remember,
what is this?
No.
Yeah, I remember trying to bridge the gap, trying to make peace between the two worlds, like back at that time, being like, no,
but Marcus,
cool.
I've known you longer than any of these.
That's incredible. It's incredible.
That's like 20 years or something, I think.
Yeah.
Wow.
So funny.
Because you were like, I mean, we can say it. You were homeless in Austin at the time,
What?
right?
Well, I mean, I was
more or less.
Yeah, pretty much. And
Some breaking news on 1 fucking hour.
I was sort of an early hanger on, like at the Draft House back in the old, in Weird Wednesday. It was like
a vagrant
weekly. I've got a long history of trusting Lars, going in to watch a movie that I know nothing about. I've got a long history of that. Like tonight, but so I'd always see Lars. Like I'd always go to the movies. And I wanted to meet him, and I always see him around town. Like he had like really long hair back then. And it was always covering his eyes. And just sort of like not making eye contact with anyone walking down the street. I'd always see him. But I don't know if you remember how we actually became friends, Lars. But
yeah, well, you lent me a tape of Terror on Tour, which I gave back to your friend Thomas. But you never heard that I gave that tape back to Thomas.
That's right. It was like 15 years later or something. Yeah. It's like 15 years later, Lars returned my tape. But I went to go see him at Half Price Books, and I was like, hey, I got this copy of Terror on Tour if you want to borrow it. And that's how
amazing.
That's
awesome. And I have to say, like, don't ever lend me anything. Like, I mean, you got your tape back, you son of a bitch. But don't ever lend me anything. Like, if people come up and say, oh, man, you got to read this book, I'll lend it to you. I will say, do you want to give me this book? Because you can give me the book if you want to. But don't ever lend me a book because I'm not going to read it on your time frame. If I read it, I might read it 20 years from now. You can give me the book, but I'm not going to borrow the book.
Well, don't sell
and it's
yourself
fine if you
short,
don't lend it to me.
He did give it back, for everyone that ever loaned him.
But it sounds like
back, so.
there was a Thomas connection, which can be a little dicey. That's what I'm inferring here. I gave it to Thomas 15 years later, So. All right, good night, everybody. That was great.
Right.
Motherfucking God.
All right.
There you go. Fascinating.
Amazing.
Really. I love that Marcus wins. Like, dude, it was 20 years. Like, I love it.
Amazing. Wow. We're going to have to get into more of your homeless years, too, on the show at some point.
I'd love to, yeah.
Carve out an hour on that.
Yeah, seriously. 1 fucking hour on Marcus. All right. But let's get down to tonight's episode number 33 of the show, guys. It's going to be 1 fucking hour on Robert Aldrich's, All the Marbles from 1981. Guys, I'm going to start that clock. Here we go. Lars, meet the clock. All right, here we go.
All right.
Starting.
Beat the clock.
We only have an hour to talk about this movie, guys. So,
but there's 4 of us, so I like
we can talk really fast. We can talk really fast.
God.
All right.
To a bad start.
All right. Let me fill the people in on this movie because this is a fucking forgotten ass movie that I'm sure not a lot of people have ever seen before. So, All the Marbles is the final film of the legendary old Hollywood director Robert Aldrich. And I read someone refer to it online as, I actually kind of like this. They referred to it as an out of gas road movie, starring Peter Falk as a gruff two-bit pro wrestling manager named Harry Sears, who attempts to maneuver his female tag team through the impoverished and nefarious maze that is the wrestling business, burdened with the dream of making it to the big time where fame and fortune await. One thing for me, pro wrestling is a big part of my life. I make a documentary series about it for TV. So I actually somehow skipped over this movie, for years. I've been a fan of wrestling for so long. And this movie, I never quite, felt like I should watch, to be perfectly honest. And
when did you first see it?
I first saw this actually last year. it was kind of like, all right, fuck it, I'm going to finally do it. You know, Peter, because I love Peter Falk. I absolutely like fucking like Mikey and Nikki is my shit.
Dude, yeah.
And I'm a rare breed of the folks that actually like Husbands, like the experience of watching Husbands. Take your hand off my hand. Take your hand off my hand. I mean, I love that shit. I love him. So the fact, like, why didn't I watch this? Peter Falk, like, as a wrestling manager, this is amazing. So I watched it, and I actually really dug how researched this movie was, which we'll get into, about what life on the road in pro wrestling was like back then. So I really appreciated the detail to that. Somebody must have been involved in this production who was really feeding them the right details. I also love...
It does say that in the credits, right?
We're going to get to that. Yeah, we're gonna get to that.
So that's
I got a whole spiel on that, and I also just love how it is and it's the last thing I'll do, and I'm gonna throw it to you, Lars. Is I just also appreciate the hell out of the fact that, as a wrestling fan too, that it is a kayfabe movie, as we say. It is a film that is not bringing you in on the secrets of wrestling. It is keeping up appearances that this is a legitimate sport. And I would like to think the folks involved in the movie, like Robert Aldrich, weren't smartened up, as we say in the wrestling business, to what, to the inner trickery of this whole underworld, which I think is pretty cool. So it's presented as a legitimate sport, which is really fun. But hey, this movie has some, dramatic shit too, and some, and which we'll get into. But Lars, you brought this movie here, whether you remember that phone call, any of the phone calls that either of us have ever had together. You brought this movie to us.
Are you gaslighting him, Evan?
I am.
Saying that Evan suggested this movie.
No.
He's fishy here.
No.
I'm sure. Evan, I'm sure. Now, we talked about this beforehand. I'm sure I suggested this movie, but I didn't know how this kind of, became the one that we were going to do, because this is, and I love this movie, and I really do. And this could have been one of like 97 movies that I love this much, because I love a lot of movies a whole lot. But I have to take issue very quickly with you calling Robert Aldrich an old Hollywood director. He was an old director. He did work in Hollywood, but calling Robert Aldrich an old Hollywood director, I think, somewhat sort of minimizes who he was. Because like when I think of old Hollywood directors, I think of like, Edward Dmytryk or Richard Fleischer, or like these kinds of guys who were like, these were the guys who were there and they were doing the work. Like Robert Aldrich, like take a second and just think about Kiss Me Deadly,
Yeah.
Backwards credits. Like what a fucked movie. One of the most fucked movies ever.
It is true. You're right.
Take a minute to think about Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Sure.
Fucked movie.
Yeah.
And then you go on like through his work, and like Dirty Dozen didn't just happen. Like a guy came out and made Dirty Dozen. And you look at this movie, you look at a lot of the sort of really the best movie, like The Grissom Gang, unbearably violent film. Like some of the stuff that he had done, The Emperor of the North, for God's sake. Yeah. It's like this was a guy who was a really personal filmmaker. And yes, he worked in Hollywood, but he made extraordinarily personal films. And
okay, fuck me. Fuck me.
Yeah, right. And his whole route to Hollywood is also really fascinating, which I'll kind of go into, which is, he was a scion of a billionaire family. He was a Rockefeller. He was from a family that had Chase Manhattan Bank. And all anybody ever needed for him to do was just to say, yes, Papa, I will join the family business. I will join banking. And he would not. He refused to. He said, I want to get into movies. His uncle, who was like the head manipulator, said, great, I'll get you a job as a producer at one of the studios that we have money in. And he said, no, I just want a job in the mailroom. So he got a job in the mailroom at RKO. And he literally worked his way up. He did not accept any help from anybody. This is a guy who really wrote off billions in order to do this, to work his way up in the mailroom, to work his way up to work as Jean Renoir's assistant director on The Southerner, to work as Chaplin's AD on Limelight, to direct Chaplin when Chaplin was on camera, to learn so much from Chaplin, from Jean Renoir.
That's some old Hollywood shit, though. But yeah, go on.
It is, but these are not the old Hollywood hacks. This is old Hollywood.
Yeah.
Renegades, and he was a renegade among renegades. Wild Bill Wellman, he worked for him, as an AD. So he had that chance to really kind of rise in the ranks. And then he made television. He worked for like Dick Powell and Blake Edwards. Like he directed Blake Edwards' script and worked closely with Blake Edwards. So there was like a really kind of amazing sort of ferment that was going on that produced Robert Aldrich. And I mean, I really think that if a guy made Kiss Me Deadly and then died in a car crash, we'd be like, holy shit, that was the dude.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but because he went on and he made all these other movies, some of them hit, some of them not. He made The Longest Yard, which is an enormous hit. Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, actually, believe it or not, was a giant hit.
Totally.
Veracruz had been a big hit. I don't know if you guys have seen Perdido Durango, the Alex de la Iglesias film based on the Barry Gifford novel, but like Veracruz is at the center of that, and it has like all this sort of counter sort of cultural cred in Veracruz. So he had all of that, and he was not just sort of like a normal schmo. And this movie really, for him, came out of his association with another iconoclast, Abraham Polanski, who had made Body and Soul, and
love that.
And which were amazing movies made by like these communists who got kicked out of Hollywood as soon as it was figured out. Well, he worked very closely with them, and he throughout his life quoted Abraham Polanski. And this film stars Peter Falk as very much kind of like if John Garfield had lived. This is almost like John Garfield, Body and Soul, had he lived. You know, continuing his story arc. You know, so you see that happening in his work, and this is he called it a semi-remake of Body and Soul. It's not exactly, other than it's about some of the same themes, but that theme, that Polanskian theme, and a theme that he also used when he worked with Clifford Odets on The Big Night. Clifford Odets gets name checked in this, of course, was really in this film. It's like, maintain, even though you're gonna lose, the bastards are gonna beat you down. Even though you're gonna lose, maintain your sense of self-worth, and you never know it, but you may like gain a blessing. Is what he is. That was the quote from Odets from the Big Knife screenplay that he had written.
Yeah, that is a running theme. Just an overarching one. The I don't remember names, but the brunette California girl,
Vicky, right? Vicky or Victoria?
Vicky Frederick.
Well, the actress, okay, yeah. So, she really just spells it out and says that after the mud wrestling incident, that the scene really lingers, and the film kind of hits that beat really hard, where she's like, "That was my dignity. They were laughing at me, you know." And I thought that was, you don't see that every day.
No.
Someone who's hurt by their lack of dignity and their loss of self-esteem. And actually, it's paralleled in the filmmaking, because I was reading that Aldrich insisted that the two California girls show their breasts because they were concealing them.
Yeah.
In the first one, the mud fight scene. So I just thought it was kind of it was somewhat ironic, where the director of the film, who's having as a mouthpiece this actress saying that she felt like she was being ridiculed and lost her self-esteem, had to reshoot the scene in question where her breasts were clearly lingeringly exposed. So I was like, okay,
it was. I think it was kind of part of the deal for the financing of the film.
I'm sure
at this point is like Aldrich could barely get a film made at this point, having had so many flops.
Can I say something really quickly about that scene, just because we've arrived at the mud wrestling thing? I just want to touch on that, because that really is a pretty, like when I was alluding to that the film gets a little dark for a minute. I think it's really that moment right there, and that's what I kind of appreciate about this movie, is that it went there, because one of the things to me, so obviously this movie goes like it's Peter Falk and the two girls on the road. They're going to shitty places all over, Rust Belt America.
Unbelievably shitty places.
Yeah,
which
like
we should
Ohio.
touch on. Yes,
we will. Like Ohio and all these other fucking shithole places. Toledo, right? Which is
like
very
the kind of towns. The kind of towns that the band X would shout out in like one of their songs. You know what I mean?
Right. Totally.
Like Gary, Indiana, you know what I mean?
Totally. And that's very evocative of the lifestyle of territory wrestlers back then, when before wrestling was monopolized by the WWF, you had all these little fiefdoms all over the country.
Regional.
Yeah, very regional. So it captures that lifestyle of the grind on the road, going to these shitty bingo halls and having to do matches and whatnot. And that captures this very, I think, spot on. But the mud wrestling thing is especially a great choice, because female wrestling historically, throughout the history of wrestling, has been mostly presented as something sexualized and fetishized, like a sideshow freak show. Even the WWE like in the late 90s, early 2000s, you know, when American culture was super fucking Girls Gone Wild and shit. That's what it was. I mean, that's what it was. And there are many cases of women wrestlers throughout the history that just wanted to fucking wrestle. You know, they just wanted to get out there and they wanted to kick some ass and they wanted to, you know, take names, and the industry wouldn't let them. You know,
Are they saying that? I'm the novice guy completely, so help me out. Their male counterparts, were they feeling like this? Were they feeling the same thing? And that the clown show aspects of wrestling, like they roll their eyes, they're like, I'll deal with this because what I really want to do is wrestle. Because I feel like that doesn't sound very genuine.
Well,
you know, it's all spectacle, right?
No, I mean it is, but like in terms of like, hey, there's a Dark Side of the Ring episode out there if you guys want to watch it about a wrestler named Luna Vachon, who was a very well known female wrestler who wanted to just wrestle and be a part of wrestling and the athleticism of wrestling and be respected by her peers as a wrestler. But no, she had to get in the ring and like show her breasts, and she had to like be sexualized and fetishized and all this stuff. And she was never given those opportunities by the powers that be to just fucking wrestle. And that
But how does that relate to the circus of the male pro wrestling? I don't really quite understand that.
Well, I'm saying that
they appreciate
I'm saying
like
that
their
it doesn't.
Strength and
and
their performance,
their moves,
performing, not just their like bodies and
Gotcha.
like
It's all relative.
Well, like for male wrestlers, they just get to go in there and simulate an athletic competition, and one guy wins a belt and the other, you know, and it's the art of pro wrestling, you know. But for women, they can't
but that
practice.
also includes fluorescent light bulbs over their heads. So
well, that's a different subject. All right, but that's a different. That's different.
But I understand your point.
Yeah,
and so it's even lower as far as being a geek show circus act for the female wrestlers.
Yeah.
Compared to
Well, it's different. I mean, I think it's like a chance to see lovely women in their leotards, you know, or even not so lovely women sometimes in their leotards. You know, it's basically like it's a break from watching the theater. You know,
these girls in this movie, they want to get out and they want to wrestle. They want to get out there and they want to perform and they want to be athletic and they want to win these belts. Even though the movie is in, you know, kayfabe, we're not inside the business, the secrets of the business.
Because I blocked the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, this is interesting to say that, though. What you said initially was I was buying it as a legitimate competitive sports film. I was following the narrative where it's like, you know, like, boy, you guys, you did a great match tonight, man. That was awesome. Where, of course, what we all know and what I should have kept in mind is that these are all fixed completely. It's staged and orchestrated. Who wins, who loses, how they lose, how they win, right?
There's a great line. Sorry, Marcus, go ahead.
It's such an interesting choice to do that. You're doing something that peeks behind the curtain and shows like how it's all done, but you're not actually doing it. You're still buying into the the circus of it. Yeah, it's such an interesting choice to do that.
Yeah.
It's like you almost would go into it with your own. You never take the wool off your own eyes or something. It's interesting. But
it's 1981, right, when this movie's being made. Wrestling is still very protected as an industry. And we'll talk about the technical advisor of this movie later on, but it's still a guarded sort of thing, you know. So chances that, you know, a participating professional wrestler to consult in this movie would not have exposed the business in 1981 still even then.
But just to be clear, just for the dummies on wrestling like me, it's like when we say that it's still guarded, the secret is very obvious. But I mean, there's the fake moves during the matches, you know, like it's composed. You know, but also a lot of it it was all fixed, was it not? In the sense of like, well, you lose next week and then I win, and that means that people will like me a lot, and then I can turn on you, and then they'll all turn on me. Right?
But sometimes that storyline would get broken. Sometimes the work would get broken because somebody would just be fed up, and there's I'm sure there's a technical term for that, for breaking out of the work or for not cooperating, not going along with the sell.
It's called going into business for yourself, which we'll talk about. And the idea...
I guess they did actually do that, right, in the film. They actually do, like, the...
Right, the second Toledo...
When they wrestle the Toledo Tigers, they say, like, hey, we were supposed to win. That's our crowd out there.
Well, no one's supposed to win. Well, no one's supposed to win. It's loosely, but still, that's still like kind of blurring the lines. I think for 1981, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
So
like we're saying that this film's sort of like if you did a backstage film about like magicians or something, but then you claim that like you pretended that magic was real, right? Like that.
That rabbit didn't exist 1 second ago. It's just here.
He can disappear. Yeah.
And also,
I want to make the point that I think that Aldrich probably didn't care that much about wrestling.
Yes.
He cared more about wrestling than Robert Aldrich did. What Robert Aldrich cared about was taking show business down to its molecular level, which the molecular level of show business in theatricality is probably like Midwestern, like Rust Belt wrestling. Like that is the molecular level of show business. That's as far down as you can go. I mean, I think he cared enough about wrestling that he was not going to put some bullshit product out there. And the wrestling matches look amazing. The two actresses are unreal as far as how good they are at wrestling.
Agreed.
So I think that he just would not put a shitty product out there. But I'm not so sure that he really cared that much about wrestling. Nor could he have imagined that like 40 years later, they would be like grown men taking this shit so seriously.
But I will say,
so it was the last kind of vaudeville play for 1981, like the kind of like.
I wouldn't even say vaudeville. I mean, I think Circus Maximus. I mean, I think it's like. Yeah. I mean, I think it's like it's a long discipline of performance.
Well, can I say that? Okay, you say he didn't care about professional wrestling, but I'm going to counter and say that I actually think he cared enough about professional wrestling to present it in an authentic way, because he made both of those his lead actresses fucking train and really fucking train.
And just to be clear, they could have taken women wrestlers and said act, but instead they made the choice, which I think was a good one, which was, hey, let's find two actresses who then can train for 2 months and do these wrestling moves. And I think that was really helpful. I think the woman, I got no names. The blonde woman is passable as an actress, but the brunette woman, Vicky, whatever, that's a good performance. Yeah, and she worked with Fosse. She's a stage actress and performer and dancer, and she was part of Bob Fosse's entourage, doing the musical Dancing and something else. And she's also seen very briefly in All That Jazz, and that's a fine performance.
If I may throw in that, just to Laureen Landon's credit, her part was chopped off. So originally she had a whole character arc where she had been molested as a child. She had lost all of her self-esteem, and she's finding her fight. She's finding a way to get back into that, and she's a lesbian. So all of that is somehow did not make it into the final movie.
That's a lot.
It was not shot.
She's just a pill popper in this film.
Yeah.
Which I found just below the level of like a typical after school special.
Sure.
But it's all good. Like, the representation of her drug use. And,
that's interesting though, because go ahead, Marcus.
I was just gonna say they're both dancers, right? That was sort of the connective tissue.
Vicky Frederick was. Laureen Landon was like Larry Cohen's girlfriend, and she. I mean, I'm not sure if she was quite Larry Cohen's girlfriend at that point, but later on she was, and she did a lot of sort of more athletic type acting.
I have a little tidbit on her. She actually in that interview that's out there, which I'll link in the description of this video. It's actually a great read. She was in Police Academy, not the movie, but actually training to be a cop.
Oh, okay.
And sorry.
Difference.
It is. She was going to be a cop, but she was uncomfortable with the idea of fucking, I don't know, carrying a gun around and having to kill people potentially. So she stopped being a cop, got into acting and modeling, and then got the opportunity to go to Las Vegas for some call. Went there, heard they were casting for a wrestling picture, and she wanted just to get in on it. And to her credit, they had this really grueling training because they were trained, both the lead actresses were trained by one of the most legendary, actually probably the most legendary women's wrestler of all time, Mildred Burke, who I have a whole fucking hour on if you want. But anyway, they were trained by her, and the SAG writers' strike that was going on right around that time happened during their training. And this is when they're auditioning tons of different girls for the part. And instead of everyone pausing during the SAG strike, they kept going at it and training and wrestling like real wrestlers and just going for it. And Lorraine, she actually attributes getting the part to sticking with it for those weeks or months or whatever it was during that strike, just wrestling every fucking
That's
day.
so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool because like you feel like a lot of times people don't save enough time for like rehearsal. You know, it sounds like they just rehearsed it until it was like spot on because the wrestling is like one of the best parts of the movie.
Yeah,
Like,
and
the
she said
choreography of the wrestling.
she said that like that she got to the point where the matches she was having during that time were all improvised, and she's really becoming a wrestler to do this. She's not just telling what a stunt person or even the director is sort of blocking for this, like they're fucking wrestling.
I heard Vicky, there's a quote that she has, maybe you've seen, where for the final match she says, I forgot that we were making a movie.
Yeah.
I was in that ring and committed, and I wanted to win. And you can feel that, and that is cool. That is cool.
Yeah.
And you sense that.
There's also one little fun thing, and I'll shut up. There's this really fun anecdote too about Lorraine, where during one of the several auditions while she's doing the in-ring stuff, she was wrestling in front of some MGM executives, and she was wrestling and she fell out of the ring and she actually broke her foot during this match. And she broke her foot, but she still kept pushing through the match. And they all thought that she was selling, as we say in the wrestling business, the actual broken foot. Or she was selling that she had a fake, foot injury. But she was doing it so well that they gave her the part. But she was tough enough that she stuck it out. So, and I think that comes across. I think her toughness in this movie, who she really is, does come through the screen. I think.
If I can, because I have so little to say. I'm kidding. But I thought about this immediately, and it was one really refreshing thing about the film. We talked about this briefly before we started taping. Was it passes the old Bechdel test? Yeah. And maybe can you just briefly define that, someone, just to help listeners?
Well, it's the idea that women in films. Well, just like women characters in films.
3 rules. It's 3 rules.
Right.
It's 3 rules. Does it have more than one woman? Does it have 2 or 3 women?
Right.
Do the women talk to each other,
right,
independent of any male performers? And do they not talk about men?
Right.
And that's it. And so a lot of films don't, but it clearly passes. And I found that really interesting and refreshing. Both of them have no love interest at all. Well, sorry. Vicky's character obviously has a history with Peter Falk, but still, it's only tangential to sort of like the
Sure.
larger theme of their relationship and everything. But my point being, it was great to see it's these 2 female characters in 1981, right? Okay, pretty Neanderthal time, right? Actually, when the Bechdel test was first established through this comic book, but they're talking about their wishes, their fears, how they're hurting, how one's on drugs, how one's getting off drugs. I want to stop doing this. I'm broke, and it was really refreshing. So kudos from me on that, alone.
Totally.
It's not Bechdel test related exactly, but after the mud wrestling thing happens, and before the shower scene, there's the part where they feel betrayed. It's like many movies would have just said, "Oh, we had a wacky mud wrestling thing. Isn't that funny? We went through that." But the women talk about it, and they talk about how betrayed they felt by their, somebody that they trusted, and that this wasn't what they were all about. And he's hurting, and he's feeling it, and he's really reading it, and he's receptive to it in his own sort of prickly sort of post-war World War II, late 20th century kind of way. He's receiving it.
I'm liking this film. Everything went up just one notch. Did you hear that? You feel it in the room? I'm kidding. But one thing I'm responding to in the film, beyond the Bechdel test, is it's a quirky family, and that can work in films. And I can really respond to that. It's this strange sort of slapped together family, the unit being very strange. And obviously, it's the plot of the film. It's these 2 women, not related, who are sort of related to this father figure, but he's not even quite a father figure. But I just found, but they're a family and forward, and they're trying to make shit happen. So I like that. I guess I like their interpersonal relationship overall throughout the film. And it felt again refreshing. I'll just say that again.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And there's another theme to this that is even difficult to detect if you've watched it multiple times. And I'm not sure, I might call bullshit a little bit on this theme, but Aldrich did claim that he had made this movie as kind of a reaction to Ronald Reagan getting elected, to the artificiality of this president/actor, this artificiality of show business kind of entering into our lives everywhere.
Okay.
And it's, if you could look at it, it's kind of all over the place. He shows the MGM Grand logo a lot, not because I think he's making a film for MGM, because I think he's in some way sort of chastising MGM for getting into this kind of low business of casinos.
Oh, interesting.
Also, there are show tunes throughout the film. The song "That's Entertainment" plays. "Oh, You Beautiful Doll" is plays during a really important time. So all of that happens. Also, on the subject of music, I'm not sure if there's a whole lot of meat on the bone of what the whole thing I just said about Reagan and everything, but it is interesting to note. But on the subject of music, they ride around listening to Pagliacci. And that is another sort of subtext of the film. Pagliacci, the comedy is over. In a lot of ways, Aldrich didn't know. He had not accepted, I think, that this was his last film, but he may have known it on some level that this was his last film, because he had just had flop after flop after flop, and it was apparent that Hollywood was changing, that a guy in his 60s who had just made all these flops in a row, hadn't had a hit since
Can you name some of them? Like,
some of
walk
the
us
flops
through,
that he had made?
like between Longest Yard and this film.
Okay. I'm gonna have to bring this up on my phone, which is going to take up valuable seconds.
Oh,
that's okay.
But yeah, like,
well, just to paint
32 minutes left, guys.
Yeah, dude. Let's. No. But just you can remember one of them, because I'm actually blanking. Like, what are we talking about here? You know.
Like, movies you've never heard of is what I'm saying here.
Right. That's what I want.
Hang on a second.
I want to wonder if you're making them
right.
up. No. Hold on. Let him. Like, give us like 3 or 2 or 1, just to sketch out your point.
Okay.
Where this
so
guy...
Longest Yard is in '74.
Right.
So we got that, and then we go into his next movie after The Longest Yard. And boy, when I tell you what this is, look at your face.
Wait.
Okay. So Hustle with Burt Reynolds and Catherine Deneuve, which I've seen.
Shit, dude.
Which is not very good, I'm afraid to say.
You have seen it? Okay.
Twilight's Last Gleaming with Burt Lancaster, which I've seen, and which is pretty interesting, but doesn't work, you know.
Agreed.
The Choir Boys.
Oh shit! The Wamba adaptation. That's a repugnant film.
It is a repugnant film, but because it's Aldrich, I kind of think that there's something going on, you know.
That's interesting.
The Frisco Kid with Gene Wilder and Harrison Ford.
Yes.
No,
hold on. Full stop. Harrison Ford travels with a Hasidic Jew played by Gene Wilder across the Wild West, and hilarity ensues. And box office bomb.
Yeah.
Frisco Kid.
But before The Longest Yard, and then that takes us up to all the marbles. But even before The Longest Yard, before that, Emperor of the North, great film, but a film that nobody wanted. Oldana's Raid. Nobody saw it. Nobody wanted it. Burt Lancaster, Vietnam allegory Western.
Yeah.
The Grissom Gang. Remember when you first saw the Grissom Gang when you were a kid? No, you don't.
I'll never forget it.
God, he made a lot of movies.
So, you painted a great picture, and I'm going to have Frisco Kid nightmares tonight.
Too Late the Hero before that. Cliff Robertson, Michael Caine.
Oh, Lila Claire too, right? One of the big bombs of all time.
Well, before that, The Killing of Sister George, which was kind of a hit, you know, sort of. I mean, it wasn't not a hit. Legend of Lila Claire before that, which was not a hit. The Dirty Dozen before that, which was such an enormous hit that it allowed him to build his own studio, which he ended up going bankrupt on and lost it because he made all these other flops.
So he's bomb hit for a period of time.
And before that, Flight of the Phoenix, which was, I probably did okay. Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte, which had been a Fort for Texas, which is it's a terrible film. And then before that, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, which was not a money-making hit exactly, but it was a hit, you know.
It was a phenomenon.
And yeah, like you go back and there's just like Vera Cruz was his biggest hit prior to that.
Wow. Okay. God, so many films. This guy. So you said that he sort of knew this was his last film in some ways, and obviously
he had to because he had all those bombs, and the climate had changed, and he could see it. the climate that allowed filmmakers to make $4 million bombs.
Right, but he also passed away shortly thereafter making this movie. But one thing I read, which I actually dug quite a bit, is that he did have plans for a sequel to this movie, because this movie was a bomb here in the States. I think it was.
But let the panel guess in which country it was a hit.
Unfortunately, I know.
Okay.
They were following the Bad News Bears path. So it was the California Girls in Japan, and
California Dolls go to Japan,
or Dolls, yeah.
But hey, that's but also, but hey,
Japan, I see.
Well, hey, but that was, I mean, wrestling is Japan's the second largest, wrestling country in the world, and it's amazing too because it would have been perfect, and the idea of when there's that Japanese wrestling promoter or guy or fixer who comes into the locker room early on, he's like, hey, these girls will be great over in Japan, and that's what they probably would have done, in 1981 too, which I think it's cool. I would like to have imagined.
Same here.
Seeing that.
Why don't you write some fan fiction?
Also, it's not a small calculation here. I heard an interview with Cheryl Ladd one time where she was talking about why she's so big in Japan, and she was like, "Oh, they love white girls over there."
Oh God,
it's true.
True. Well, can we?
There's whole books on like Jodie Foster.
Yeah,
like you go to a Japanese bookstore.
No, like Olivia Hussey is like the biggest star in the world.
I was just going to say that. Yeah. I have a Romeo and Juliet booklet from Japan, and it's just one picture of Olivia Hussey after another, and it's like that's the topic of the book, and it's like
the Runaways, right?
And she's not at all and she's not at all popular, Olivia Hussey. They make it seem like she's this enormous international superstar, but only there.
Can we talk about? Can we talk a little bit about Peter Falk in this movie?
Absolutely.
Let's not.
Maybe
one more thing.
What's your one more? Well, one more thing.
Hold on.
What's your guys' favorite Peter Falk moment in this movie? For me, it's "Did you get me a Three Musketeer? Did you get me a Three Musketeer?" I love that,
I love all his his musings about the wisdom of Clifford and Odets.
Picking
them up like, as Clifford and Odets would say, it's better than sticking a pencil in your eye.
No, he says, doesn't he say that his father was taught to learn English through reading Odets and
Will Rogers.
Will Rogers. So it's like Roger and Odets, and then the girl, when the California Dolls gets it wrong, he goes, Who's like Rogers Odets, and which is kind of stupid because she'd been listening. Yeah, I know. My favorite moment of his, that's hard to beat. How about he like kicks a lot of ass, like remember, like, okay,
trashes the car.
Yeah, there's that. Well, also he beats up those guys who were gonna rip him off. Yep.
Oh,
there's
a
lot
that.
Yeah, his like him and his bat, But okay, let's get ready, guys. One thing that really threw me off in this film was suddenly it was like soundstage. Like when he's being approached by the two guys that are going to rip him off after the card game, it suddenly is like, like a Burbank lot. And I'm like,
yeah.
And it looks like Night Stalker. But then also every one of the backstage, like getting, like working on your sores and pain. It's all that same kind of really creaky, like 50s, 60s set. Like Mission Impossible kind of thing, and it really takes me out of the film.
I felt that too. Like when they're in the motel room and stuff, and like there's a scene where she's knocking on the door outside, and the lighting's really harsh, like really hard shadows, like stage shadows, but she's like outside, and
supposed to be the sun.
It's that TV lighting, TV stage thing that happens, and it's weird because it's like. You might forget about it, except for there's all those cool driving shots with like really long lenses and stuff.
That's great, beautiful.
I read that those were
the comparison is jarring. Yes.
Yes, I read that those were shot by his daughter. Like did second unit, so I'm guessing that's what she shot. Makes sense to me. So, all that stuff looks great, and then you compare like all those like horrible cityscapes of Toledo or whatever, and then compare it to this like shitty Burbank stage or whatever.
Yeah, no. So that threw me off.
I think what you have there is a certain amount of loyalty from Aldrich to the people that he'd worked with forever, and they would light things just so. I mean, don't blame the sets. It's not the sets' fault. It's the fault of the lighting. It's having the ability to light like all this set stuff, brightly and for 3 dimensions and all that. And that's it's not the sets, it's the lighting.
Yeah, I looked up that DP. He's like he goes way back to like It's a Wonderful Life. So like they lit things a lot different back.
There's
then.
a great
a lot of rules that
Makes
people
sense.
dropped
I get
later.
There's a great, really shitty set moment in this movie too, when she's taking the shower, after she comes back from sleeping with, is it Burt Young, right? And she goes in to take the shower and she's crying, or it's after the mud wrestling match, I can't remember, but she's crying and then she bangs
Mud
her
wrestling.
she bangs her fist on the shower
And the wall
set just
shakes?
goes, and the wall shakes.
The wall shakes like it's a
classic
sketch,
move.
like it's a sketch comedy show wall.
That's the worst scene in the movie. It's the most dishonest, it's kind of inauthentic scene in the movie.
Right.
And, it's cut down to the bare bones.
It feels like it. Yeah, they get
Yeah.
it. They just get it out of the way.
How about
But we weren't talking about Peter Falk.
Yeah.
How about sideliners on
how about
Studios set? Sorry.
How about the Peter Falk moment where he's like, when like the girls are running and he's driving in the car? I got an idea.
Yeah.
How about you dye your hair, but everywhere? You dye your eyebrows. You're gonna dye your hair under here. It's gonna be bright colors.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
And they reject
I was
that.
watching
yeah.
the Siskel
But I mean,
and Ebert review. and
classy colors.
Yeah, classic.
that's the clip they pulled on Siskel and Ebert too, just to
I know,
underline how
really?
much
I
they
noticed
hated
that.
the film. Let's
I watched that clip this afternoon because Evan sent me the little clip of them, how they both, Siskel and Ebert, hated the film. They're both
I vote
thumbs
no.
down. I hate Siskel and Ebert so much. I hate them. They're the worst. They're like the Consumer Reports, They're like, we help you make informed buying decisions,
Like
But
you're,
it's
like you know what? You're not spending your dollar well by seeing Bertolucci's tuna. Like go spend that $5 somewhere else.
But
Get some
these-
ice cream.
these schmucks are like, Peter Falk has made a new movie. It's like, and then they go into like the whole thing, and it's like, and then Siskel even, who's like, I don't know who's worse, this Siskel or this Ebert, but Siskel even is like, now you see most. Who's going to let you believe that these beautiful girls would be wrestlers? Because most of the female wrestlers you see are kind of chunky.
Kind of big and chunky. Wink, wink. He did.
Jeez.
Siskel and Ebert is sort of the twin patron saint of the show. I have a love-hate relationship with them. I grew up with them, so I would hear about. Yeah, so I only knew about Taxi Zum Klo when I was 11 years old because they are like My Dinner with Andre. So it's the reviews don't matter. And I actually did just watch their Bertolucci's Luna, and it was so dismissive. It was like, wow, you guys are less than middlebrow here. Like, wow, this is how dismissive they can be. But whatever, they also supported Herzog and stuff. So
the only time,
understood, and I don't know if they got this film wrong that much, in my humble opinion. But I obviously disagree with them, especially Big Boy, a lot.
Well, the only time for me, and Tom, you're gonna love this, and we'll get back on track. The only time that Siskel has really shined as a real star to me is if you go back and you watch the Siskel and Ebert on Patch Adams, where fucking Siskel is dying of cancer.
I know.
And he just basically is like, this patronizing motherfucking movie, or whatever. And
I know.
that's a moment where Siskel shines.
Yeah.
So
He's
anyway,
personally incensed. Let's not get too sidetracked. Peter Falk. No. I think this is a cornerstone of the film. I mean, again, I would have not much interest if it wasn't Peter Falk. If it was like, I don't know, John Saxon or something,
Oh,
so
wasn't it supposed to be Paul Newman at first?
Yes.
I'd read.
Well, I'm sure that was like a wish list thing,
I don't know, Lars.
We wrote it for Paul Newman. He never saw the script.
Yeah, I never read that. I haven't seen that. So I've read all the contemporaneous interviews, but I've never read that.
But Peter Falk, I like where you were going with this, Evan, which was like pet moments, because you kind of took mine. The whole candy bar incident.
Sorry.
And he's a little bit comically magical or something like that. Like somebody mentioned just now, like, you hit it with a bat and you get all the cigarettes you want. It's like he has this sort of like cartoonish streetwise thing, like in the middle of nowhere in the Rust Belt.
his character just like into
Yeah.
overdrive, right? Like he's
Yeah,
just-
exactly. And I will say this one thing: I like sort of again the sort of the pop culture cartoonish version of maybe someone like a Bukowski. And what I'm getting at is sort of this like blue collar intellectual kind of thing. I like those renderings in films, so I like where he's he could be like a cab driver playing Puccini, that kind of thing. Like, so I respond to that always. My grandfather was a little like that, and so I actually wish there was more of that. Clifford
He
Odets,
has this. He has this
referencing-
like blue collar idiosyncratic kind of like vibe about him that it's actually kind of well captured in The Sopranos. Just this kind of idea of, I don't know, he really inhabits that. I don't know where Peter Falk is from.
What?
Well, just like, in terms of like watching The Sopranos, like it's funny because of these guys are inhabiting this kind of stereotype so well, and
Okay. Gotcha.
he is that same vibe where I don't think he's intentionally being funny all the time, but he just is inhabiting this kind of idiosyncratic, I don't know, mindset to me that is so
I gotcha. Idiosyncratic is the word.
It's so electrifying to watch him just kind of like, I don't know, play with shit and pontificate, and it's great.
Yeah.
It's like a guy on the subway.
His whole life story is there, like in the way that he's
Right.
waits for his change back.
That's
or
what I'm
whatever,
saying.
Like
Right.
Yes.
all that kind of stuff.
Well, and
Yes.
he's also to speak to that. One of the character traits that I guess the screenwriter and that Falk worked on was that he's a frustrated artist, and I kind of appreciated that. It's like, hey, I'm maybe in another life I could have been, like a great actor or like a film director or a painter, but I'm going to kind of exercise my creative, will and talent through, having the girls, wear those outfits and have all these kids get a couple bucks and start singing. Like he has this this creative ambition. It's actually funny. He doesn't quite have the ambition of like, I want to, retire and live on an island and just be rich. So I like his ambition, which is creative fulfillment. Am I getting that right? That seems to be the most driving thing for him. Is he put on a beautiful show with the girl?
Which is why this is like Aldrich's testament. This is the testament of this guy who was a filmmaker who kind of did it his own way, and this is his sort of last will and testament. That what Falk does here is what Aldrich did. He put on a wonderful show. He went down to MGM and he put on a wonderful show. I mean, it's all kind of right there for me, and I see that whole subtext there, and I admire this man so much. I admire Aldrich so much through his failures, through his films that don't work, and this is, one of those. But through all these films that do work, I really admire this man through his life struggle where he turned down literally billions, because he loved this so much. I see all of that. I see Peter Falk as Aldrich. I don't think
surrogate
that's
for
a
Aldrich.
huge stretch.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like
I
an
just like the
autobiography or
film a
something.
little more.
That was Lars's goal. That was
It's like going up. All right,
But
I like this.
all of that because I had just read all this stuff about Aldrich. All of that stuff was present when I first watched this film. So that reading was
Tell us
there
about that.
with me the whole time.
Tell us about just like your personal connection to this movie. Why was this a suggestion, that I guess picked for you?
that I might have made to you, that I probably made to you when I was just like really
half asleep.
in a dark place, because nobody's gonna watch this. This episode.
It's perverse.
I mean,
It's
maybe
really-
they might because of my star power.
Yeah, they will.
But,
They will. They
True.
definitely-
Probably.
Yeah.
I was aware of this film when it came out because I remember seeing. I remember seeing it in the HBO guide. I remember seeing it like at Playboy Sex and Cinema. That there were like stills from this film, and
There's a lot of
it's like,
stills
oh,
from this movie that are out there. There's a lot of professional
it-
photo shoot
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
And I was thinking, oh, this looks like I would watch this film as a whatever I was 10-year-old when it was on HBO. So, but I never watched it. Never really considered like going back and watching it, even as much as I love Aldrich. But then my boss Richard Linklater, of all people, he and I do a series called Jewels in the Wasteland sometimes, and these are films. these are kind of rediscovered films from the 80s, films from the 80s that, never really became part of the zeitgeist exactly. But let's go back and watch, I don't know, Cutter's Way or something, to choose like one of the more well-known ones, and watch those films and kind of, we'll watch them and we'll digest them on stage together through a discussion. And he had sent me like a whole list of films that he was interested in showing, and I did the research to find out if we could find prints of this stuff. And All the Marbles was one of those films, and it kind of stuck with me, like, All the Marbles, really? That movie, that piece of shit looking movie? And then I watched it, and, I had a different reaction than, many of the panel here, because I really loved it, because I saw that reading that I just gave, that whole Aldrich reading, I saw, I tracked that the whole time. And because I'm tracking it the whole time, I'm getting more meaning, because I'm tracking the subtext from the beginning,
I appreciate that. I'm seeing that through you. I had none of that. Aldrich is a blank for me. I don't know which way with him. So to hear all that is
that's so often the
I'd almost
the
watch
case.
it again.
Yeah, it's so often the case that the story behind the movie enriches the film. Like
Totally.
That's true.
That's half.
A lot of the films we
having a film
cover
made
are like that
these days, right? So you have to have that.
But there are some like little grace notes in this that I really appreciate that I want to be sure that we cover before our time is up. And
These two.
Marcus, you mentioned one of them. You mentioned the like all the second unit stuff, like the driving stuff. That to me is hugely important for the film.
Yeah.
Because like those towns, those unbelievably depressing, shitty towns, like Youngstown, Ohio, or wherever, like those towns are like a character in this. Like we're looking at that and going, okay, here are these brown towns with smoke billowing out of them, and then here are these like beautiful women. I mean, those actresses are gorgeous women. These beautiful, fresh daisies of women.
Well, they're California dolls.
Supposedly, yeah, right.
But I'm saying they're so out of place.
Which I doubt. I think I think they're from Hartford, Connecticut, or something. I don't
Totally.
Sure.
No. You guys just did moniker. But, there's one really nice moment to speak to what you're saying. Vicky, her character, the brunette gal, they go by, they're in the middle of a conversation in the car, and they go, they're talking about how they're bitching and complaining about the work. And like, we don't make any money doing this, tag team wrestling. And then they happen to drive right by what looks like hell on earth, like a what is it? Smelting? What is that? Smelting? What's that term?
Yeah, smelting plant.
Like a smelting plant with like, she's like, man, we could be working there. And it just looks like an open, like hell wound on earth, like of just belching flames. And he lingers on that. And I was like, that's nice. And I was like, what this film is for me a lot? Hey, can I have more of that? Can I have more of that? Can I have more folk idiosyncrasy? Can I have more of the Rust Belt stuff? Side note, no, I know. I just can I have more of that, Mm-hmm. So one thing, it's just about the same time, the Fabulous Stains, they're going through the same roads. And I really responded to that in this film because it adds so much character to that film because it's a really underused in that time, 1981, like what does the rest of America look like in 1981? You know what I mean? It's like, we're not in LA, we're not in New York. Like, can we just go anywhere else? And, and the focal point is almost like in this film, it's like Chicago, which, that happened a little bit because of Belushi and SNL connections, stuff like that. Continental Divide, shout out. But I really responded to that. That's something that I really appreciated in the film. And I thought that it was shot really well. It's interesting to hear this. What is this? You say his daughter shot the second unit?
That's what I read, is that Aldrich's daughter shot second unit. So I'm just assuming that was the biggest second unit.
How about the Wendy's
the
scene?
wrestling and stuff too? But
it's really dope. How about that Wendy? I rewound it. I was like, I'm getting every ounce of this.
Smoking
Wendy's.
cigarettes and Wendy's and shit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Wendy's.
Yeah.
Like,
It's amazing.
yeah.
And hey, that is on the wrestling road, my friend, is a Wendy's. Every wrestling road has got a Wendy's.
Just one final point on that, like the scenery, all that Toledo stuff, like that really grounds Peter Falk's cartoonishness too, like because he is of that world, and it makes him, because his like voice and persona, working class, all that dovetails so nicely with that scenery. It does ground him in the reality, because otherwise,
very at home there.
Yeah.
And I fucked up, by the way.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say I fucked up, by the way. He says Three Musketeers. He doesn't even say Three Musketeers. It's Three Musketeers.
You bring me a snicker. You bring me a snicker.
You bring me a Three Musketeer? Yeah.
Yeah. But like those smokestacks that are, it's like those are like these Moloch type hell that is consuming souls like him, consuming these kinds of souls just with every second, like five Peter Falks a second being consumed in those smokes.
If I can too, there's something going on I think I'm going up half a notch right now with this observation. One of the things it does that I respond to a lot in films is the dichotomy between hard, ugly reality, which is what most people are living through day to day. Like the car that you drive by where the window's busted out and they're just using like a garbage bag to cover the broken window, that kind of thing. And so that kind of reality is very well established in the film. But what else is the film? A lot of it is fantastical, unreal show business. Mm-hmm. And I like that dichotomy. And I think there's another point maybe not a point that Aldrich is making, but he seems to be very comfortable existing and having those two chafe against each other. And I really responded to that. And all I'm really saying, in essence, is just, hey, this is where their audience lives and works. They eat at Wendy's, they smelt all day, and they just want to see some girls beat each other up. And I think that was a good call on his part to paint that picture of the environment, because that's where the audience is. You know what I mean?
Just because time is running short, Lars, are there any big other Grace notes you wanted to get in? I did want to touch a little bit on Mildred Burke before we're over.
Yeah.
If that's okay.
I wanted to talk about the final match, because I think that you're seeing, just in terms of the kinetic work there, in terms of the directionality, in terms of the shooting, the multiple cameras shooting, the direction of that, it really is a masterwork of direction of a wrestling match. It's so hard. It's so hard to make, as you know, Evan, from producing stuff, it's so hard to make something where you can tell what's going on and who's over here and who's over here, what's the point of view and everything. To do that with two tag teams of two women, and then two managers, and then a referee who's like a total wild card, and then the guy who's tipping off the referee and all of that, and then the people that Peter Falk has staged throughout. It's like you've got all these points of view, you've got all these people to keep up with, and then it's got to feel kinetic and not staged, and not like somebody just said, "Okay, action." It's got to feel like it's going on the whole time, and I think it's just so masterfully done. I think all the matches are really well filmed, but that last match, because there's so much going on, and it's not just that the stakes are high or whatever. It's like it is such a masterpiece of filmmaking and editing, and acting and all of the whole thing.
Yeah, and for me,
all
it's
the marbles.
I also think anytime professional wrestling is shot on 35 millimeter, or it looks so awesome, because you rarely see it, on film, in that way with the handheld, 35 millimeter stuff. I even love the way the first opening match looks too in that arena. I think it looks fucking awesome. It looks so authentic. Yeah. It is such a great job.
Both those moments felt like I spent the most money on the shoots, at those two scenes. It feels like
top and bottom.
The end, the end is sufficiently pays off, I felt like when that end kicks in, I felt like, okay, I'm really glad I sat through this. And I don't know if you showed it if you said you showed this at AFS or not, Lars, but
there was no print, so I didn't.
I felt like I wanted to see it in a theater, because I would love to see hear the music really loud, and to see them the big reveal of those costumes and stuff with the star filter, and I bet that would feel really good in the theater to see that
totally
moment,
totally.
And as you guys know, and you make this point, Marcus, I'm sorry, I know you want to get to this, but real quick. So when you spend a lot of time shooting one type scene, you get to spend less time shooting other kinds of scenes. So I would say that some of the sort of basic lighting, the basic sort of studio sets probably comes down to saving some time here. This is your sacrifice.
Right. Well, you were talking about the ending wrestling matches, and just, obviously I think all the wrestling in this movie is of pretty high quality, and that's largely in part because of Mildred Burke. And I just wanted to give a special quick shout out to her, because she was the person credited at the end of the film as the wrestling consultant or whatever. She was the first female star of wrestling, period. And she's a fascinating character. She could be worth her own biopic. Someone should do it. If I don't know, I'll fucking do it. But basically, she was a big marquee star back in the 30s and 40s, one of the biggest box office draws ever in wrestling at that time, and she was plucked out of Kansas, way back in the day by a promoter named Billy Wolf. She was like this poor, woman, but had an incredible athletic background, and she wanted to be somebody someday. So Billy Wolf was this horrible one of the most vile promoters you can possibly imagine. You know, the guy, he was just a sick, horrible person. But anyway, he wound up marrying Mildred Burke. So they were together for a very long time. And he was very abusive towards her. He was cheating on her with all the other women wrestlers because he basically had a stable of women wrestlers. But she had this insane thing happen to her where towards the end of her career, and this kind of echoes with some of the themes of the movie, is that she never wanted to give up the women's championship because she had it. She was the women's champion for a very long time, and she never wanted to give up the belt because she knew that if she did, she would be aged out immediately, and that would be the end of her career, and that would be completely over. So back in those days, we were talking about how you had to go into business for yourself. She was somebody who consistently would be defending her belt for real all the time because people were really trying to get it off of her to, you know, get the next generation going. But you had to actually fucking beat her, which you could never do. And the crazy thing is that her husband, who was the promoter, he was sleeping with some other younger female wrestler, and he wanted to put the belt on her. And so she went through fucking hell because her own husband beat her up in a parking lot to try and get her to not fucking to just give up the belt, and he beat her up in a parking lot. Yeah. And she didn't do it. And then they actually, like, that match actually happened where it was her versus the person that her husband is cheating on her with, you know, and it was apparently like an hour-long match that was completely boring, totally off script, and she was just fighting her way through this match to not give up the belt, you know, even though the script told her that she was supposed to. So she's this legendary, very complex, interesting character in wrestling history, and the fact that she lent all of this, you know, I'm sure real hard-edged credibility to this production is just really fascinating to see her name there because, yeah, she's a legend as far as women's wrestling. I mean, she is where it all kind of, you know, goes back to for women's wrestling. So pretty fast. I mean, I skipped over a bunch of fascinating shit, but she's a fascinating character.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so good, so good.
Yeah. So anyway, go ahead,
While
Marcus.
we're shouting out people, just like this is so random, but like I was sort of curious about Big Mama. You know,
I was boom, 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 boom. Yeah, yeah.
Can
she's
you
like
take
this.
it away,
She's like
Lars?
this Fellini. She's like this Fellini-esque, like
Totally.
you know, actress. Like, where did she come from? I looked up her name. It's like, oh, she did 3 other things, playing, you know, large woman or whatever. Like, yeah, she's incredible.
Pee Wee
And she's
Herman.
like. And she's got like she's like get rid of this light beer, bring me a real beer, and that's when you know she's really enjoying it. You know, it's so awesome.
In the Cheech and Chong movie. Yeah, big,
Okay.
that's dedicated to her, this
It
episode.
looked like she was like in, you know, like a bunch of like Night Court, Hill Street Blues, Murder She Wrote, stuff like that. Like always playing like a big female heavy.
Yeah,
you
she's
know?
amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing in this.
And then Richard Jekyll, who plays the referee, he went way back with Robert Aldrich to the 50s, you know, to his first movies. So those are guys who work together. He's great playing this crooked referee at the end.
Oh, the fucking henchman from The Godfather.
Luca Brasi,
Oh yeah,
Luca
also
Brasi.
Luca Brasi. Yeah.
who wasn't an actor, but a real strongman for the mob. So there's authenticity there. And then Burt Young from, good old from Rocky. Always great to see him, even in, Uncle Joe Shannon, which was, his big vehicle. We're gonna do that someday, by the way. If we're doing this film, we're doing.
He says, if I wanted class, I would have gotten the Bronte sisters.
Right. So it was a pleasure to see him pop up. What's that candy bar line?
You got my Three Musketeers, my Three Musketeers.
What about the Ersatz Hustle? They play they have that joke about the Hustle song, and they do like.
Oh yeah, the
Right.
car starts hustling. Priceless. All right, that's
Bing.
it. Ding 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 ding. The bell goes off.
little wobbly finish there, but that was 1 fucking hour on all the marbles, man. Hey, we did it. There's shit left on the table for sure on that still. So, and that's always the case when you have just 1 hour to get.
Not
into
a lot, I don't think.
Okay. Really? I thought you were loaded for bear.
So
Did
an
you get it
hour
all
is
in?
about right.
I brought it. That was a bare load that I brought.
Okay, you did.
So
You
this
did.
is a perfect
Brung it.
1 fucking hour movie. Like,
Yeah.
just,
There you go.
like, do you feel like you've emptied the bag?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about the same stuff over and over again, but I mean, it's not a super complicated. It's not a really complicated movie. It's not like it's not Tarkovsky or something.
There was a point like in the pod when I was like, we talked about everything. I thought I looked up and there's still 35 minutes left, and I was like, "Holy shit! I don't know if we're gonna make it." We did.
There's
We
stuff.
made it.
There's stuff.
We
There's
made
plenty
it.
of stuff.
No, there is.
Falk,
There is.
Just Falk and Aldrich alone, just that's the thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then just the sport of wrestling and
Yeah, no,
Evan
and
being here,
I like our new habit of doing like the kind of Monday morning quarterbacking of our podcast we just
Yeah,
recorded.
what are we
But
doing?
I like the I actually
Why did
really
Why do we start doing that?
Robert Aldrich is a really fascinating person in Hollywood history. I mean, he's really. I'm glad you sort of corrected my ass on that too, because the film noir movie. Help me out.
Kiss Me Deadly.
Thank you very much. Kiss Me Deadly, man, is fucking awesome and it is ripe for a one fucking hour, for sure.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
it's a killer movie, and I actually just watched it again like just a few months back. So
It's so perverse. It is so perverse.
it really
It
is.
is just like it's like what sense of humor did this sense of humor land on a meteorite or something? Because like there's almost nothing that you can kind of compare it to.
It feels
in
like an
terms of,
EC
like,
comic.
later stuff.
Yeah.
Like later stuff.
Not for
but even like EC
1954.
Comics, like even EC Comics would have much more of like kind of a basic rooting in like morality. It is so amoral.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. That's true. But anyway, Lars, man, so good to have you finally on the show.
Great to have
We've been talking about this for a long time, and I'm actually kind of glad we like picked something super fucking weird and deep cut.
It's perfect.
Because this movie, you know what?
Oh yeah.
This movie is very Lars, and to me in a lot of ways, it's like of the Lars time period. To me, it just kind of has that sort of like something you can just kind of, I don't know, Lars movies you can kind of just slide into. I feel like like it's just.
I mean,
I
I wasn't
time when-
surprised. I wasn't surprised to hear the title.
Right.
Yeah. Like Lars, he sure listed all the marbles. I'm like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's a very like
not
anything
surprised.
like anything released on video disc is going to be a Lars film, or any record on 8-track. I feel like is going to.
And a lot of times, just something that's overlooked and not ripe for reevaluation in some perverse way, some mechanical way. Like, well, I'm going to look at it because it's overlooked, but just what was the name of this thing that you guys do? You and Linklater? What's the name of the series?
Jewels in the Wasteland.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean,
Yeah.
there it
And
is.
I'm not
And there's,
surprised
like,
that the title was.
There's whole lists of like the things that we did for Jewels in the Wasteland. It's like, I mean, we've done like probably 25 or 30 movies in that
cool.
series, and there's like Pope of Greenwich Village and just stuff that like a lot of people had never seen or never heard of.
Took my thumb,
Dude.
Yeah. But these days, no one's seen anything. But I know what you're saying.
Oh my God, Pope of Greenwich Village, man! I could do a fucking hour on
I know.
that. When you
Well,
guys
we
are
love Eric
ready.
Roberts.
Have you guys seen? I did a commentary for this, so like I'm pretty biased. I love this movie. Have you seen Coca-Cola Kid?
Yeah.
We should.
Let's
that would.
Makeveyev, right?
Yeah.
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 That is a fucked movie.
awesome.
I mean, I don't know if you guys ought to do it for one fucking hour. It's probably I don't know. In my experience, people don't get it. People don't really see the humor, and they're just like, I didn't understand what that was. Why was Coca-Cola so prominent in that, or whatever? But like, I think it's brilliant. But I have a sick sense of humor, so I mean,
Yeah.
For me, like All the Marbles is really funny. So it's my sense of humor that responds to that, and same
Right.
with Coca-Cola Kid.
Right. Lars, is there a like letterboxed link for all of the Jewels in the Wasteland or something that I could toss in the
I think
description?
I think I made a Jewels in the Wasteland list
Cool.
at some point. That people
Love to see that.
I'm sure I have it in my list.
I'll
Marcus, you made a lot of good points during this, but I didn't really understand if you liked the movie or not.
It's better than sticking a pencil in your eye.
Come on.
So no, I think that I think at first I was felt similarly to Tom. Like I didn't have that much to say about it, but I was open to it going in, and I think that my appreciation of it rose a lot, and I think the insight into Aldrich's life and stuff, and a lot of the craft that we talked about stuff, it really expanded my appreciation of it. So I'd say too that I went into this actual podcast not really caring so much about the movie. I wanted to do tonight really badly and do this film with you and talk to you about this movie. I was not so hot in the film, but I'm going out of it, and I think I'm going to say I really do like this movie now. So
there you go.
It
See?
did happen. It did.
There we go.
You kind of called that beforehand, though. You're like, I think think
We're gonna
you guys
convert
can turn
Marcus. We're
Yeah,
gonna turn
exactly.
Marcus tonight.
Right.
Yeah,
They flipped Marcus.
we flip Marcus. We flip Marcus. All right.
And I'm exactly where I was, but those two tiny, like fought for notches. But that's notches, you know.
But it also went down to not commensurate notches in some other
No.
department. Yeah.
I don't know.
No, it's no. I can tell. I can tell.
I think the bottom line is, and I'm a fool for this. By the way, we're still talking about the movie.
I know this is a legal action here.
We have a guest. It's exciting. But the last thing I'll say is, I am a fool because what I love are damaged films. And this is a damaged film, and I didn't even think of it that way. Meaning, I thought it was a more controlled, composed project where like everyone was kind of more or less satisfied, like
you
going
go.
into it and getting out of it.
That's a
but
huge
I'm realizing,
difference. Yeah.
right, and so I'm realizing, like you were saying, what happened was Lars mentioning that, like, you know, they put all their marbles into like the wrestling matches more, and they were just like half-assing on, like, you know, going down the alleyway with the tough guys, you know. And I'm like, okay, because they got to prioritize, and like it was born a little weird, and you know, so many films that I love are born a little wrong. You know,
And
like,
that alleyway thing was clearly like a reshoot too. It was like we gotta have more
Producer note.
We
Yeah.
gotta feel more like we're on his side. We gotta feel more like
All
we're
right,
right with the
guys.
struggle. You know.
Hey,
I got a referee.
Peter,
I
where's
gotta-
that bat? You need that
I
bat
gotta.
back.
I got to referee this.
We are
This is
really badly double dipping here. So
we
full stop.
are. This is bad behavior. All right. Anyway, Lars, you gotta.
encouraged.
Yeah, this is not good. We are this is not living up to our oath. All right. Anyway,
Special guest clause. It's okay.
yeah, special
The big
guest.
question that's left is, can we do this again sometime? Will Lars come back and?
Ooh.
I
and
vote
us again?
no. He's never going. Only if we do Coca-Cola.
That's an inside joke.
No, I'll put it this way. If you want to come back, you always get to pick the film without any thumbs up or down from us. 'Cause
Yes.
I like that. That's fun.
You got carte
Like
blanche.
you just
Yeah,
go.
you got
Guess what we're doing? Spunk, and we can't say anything. We're mute. We're on mute. You know, on your picks.
Oh,
There
you're
it
on
is.
mute. Oh, well, I had to
you're
shut down
on.
Lars. So okay.
What's happening?
I don't know. I think Lars is on mute.
You're on mute, bro.
He said, "I'll come. I'd be happy to come back."
Yeah.
Yes, I'm gonna pick some. Latin
Yeah. Oh,
movies.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Evan's looking really nice tonight. I like this floral background. All right, guys. While Lars is muted and cannot talk, this is a perfect opportunity for us to talk about next week, which does not involve Lars. So let's discuss what we will be doing for the next.
Disconcerting.
Jesus Christ. This is. It's very surreal and upsetting.
Yeah. This is freaking
Give me
out
my
a little.
three musketeer over here. All right. So, guys, next week, one
Next
fucking
week.
hour. Let's talk about it. Tom.
What are we doing?
Okay, we are. No, this is special because, you know, when we started one fucking hour, we did a little dry run, a little test, a little one fucking hour
A demo reel.
demo reel to see if this wacky experiment called One Fucking Hour would work. And the title that we actually picked, the film we picked for this, is the movie we're going to redo officially now for our 34th episode, which will be One Fucking Hour on Some Kind of Monster. Yes, that's right.
Oh
The 2000, what is this? 2003-ish? Four
yeah, three.
documentary about Metallica in therapy, trying to record the worst album of all time. And so we
Not
are
even in their career.
Not just
No.
their worst album. Yeah.
The Saint Anger just like takes the cake with everything. All the marbles.
Yeah.
So,
We're not just gonna
we're doing it.
We're not just gonna release the Lost episode number
No.
number 0 as number 3.
No one's going to see that because it
No,
went very
that's-
badly.
very bad.
But even worse than what we do now. It's crap. But yeah, we're doing. It's 1 hour. Saint Anger. Cringy new haircuts. New bass player cringe.
Should we get new haircuts for that episode?
I think so. Yeah. Twiggy Ramirez cameo. It's going to be rough, dude.
Yeah, it's gonna be real fucking rough.
Because evidently all the kids are talking about Metallica this week because of
That's
Stranger
right.
Things.
That's right. So we thought
Join the conversation.
we'd squash that enthusiasm real fucking hard with a look at some Metallica cringe. And it's actually, you know what? Some Kind of Monster is some top shelf cringe. And it's pretty great.
It is.
So I'm very excited.
The film is valid. It's
Yes.
just what it's
Of
documenting
course.
is
Of course.
pretty rough.
Of course, yes.
Lots of Lars.
So-
Lots of the other Lars.
Yeah.
Bad Lars. Yeah.
He's like, oh, you're
We had good Lars, now we're having bad Lars.
Yeah. So, all right, everybody. So get your pre-watch in 1 fucking hour on Some Kind of Monster, the making of whatever Saint Anger, and it's gonna be fun. I'm excited. I think the hour is gonna be rough on that one, but it's gonna be fun. And everybody, have a great rest of your week. Lars, thanks again for coming on. All
you,
the
man.
marbles. Yeah, it was beautiful.
Really a pleasure.
But
Really
we
good
cannot let our faithful audience go. No, without their parting gift, their parting moment of Zen. All right, everybody, enjoy that, and we'll see you next time. All right, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Do something. You dirty rat. I'll show you. This is an overmatch right off here, I want to tell you. I'm attacking you?
This is what we call a full Nelson in wrestling.
That's a full Nelson.
Oh, I love it. Oh, more.
That's right. Thank you, that's very sweet.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.